Welcome to the Power Shift Podcast. I'm your host, Maggie Bio. Join me as we uncover how setbacks, challenges, and failures can become those pivotal moments that lead to purpose-driven, fulfilled lives. Each week, my guests and I will be sharing stories, insights, and tools to help you reclaim your power and show you how life's biggest challenges are happening for us, not to break us, but to redirect us toward the life we deeply desire. Whether you're here for inspiration, mindset shifts, or just to feel more aligned in your journey, you are in the right place. So whether you're catching a break, powering through, or squeezing in some me time, let's dive into the lessons hidden in life's ups and downs. We're here to embrace every unexpected twist, moving toward a life of passion, purpose, and authenticity. These stories, they are proof that you too can make those shifts happen. Let's get started. Hello and welcome back to the Power Shift Podcast. I'm your host, Maggie, and today I have a very special guest, Claire, and her and I met not too long ago, but I resonated with a lot of her story because I have two parents who are in education, and she has been in the education world for a long time, it sounds, and she's also made a power shift in her life to understand what she really has been here to do. And so I want to kind of pass this over to you, Claire. Introduce yourself, tell us what it is that you're doing now and why you are so inspired to do so.
So there's a few reasons why I was inspired to leave teaching. Firstly, it was a bit of a COVID reaction. I felt like there was a lot of children in my classroom that were really struggling with their mental health. And as an English teacher, teaching lots of Shakespeare and lots of tragic plays, and nobody ever survives to the end, I wasn't really helping with that. So I left teaching just under 3 years ago to set up my first business, which is a franchise business working with children. And I'm just in the throes of setting up my second, which will be working exclusively with adults. So yeah, really massive change. I never saw myself leaving teaching. It was a career for life. But I'll be honest with you, I haven't really looked back.
Oh.
I don't miss the politics of the classroom. Yeah.
I love that. And I want to talk a little bit about that because you said something so clearly stated is that you never thought you would leave the classroom, and you
Yeah.
did, and you've never looked back. So I like to talk about that because I think a lot of people get stuck in
Yeah.
that I never think I will do, or the hold themselves back because of maybe the unknown or the scariness about it. And so you
Yeah.
said that very clearly. And I would love to kind of dive into that a little bit about where it came from, and how did you really truly just say to yourself, I'm going to trust this shift in my life? And
Yeah.
you just said it you've never looked back.
So I started at a new high school in January of 2022. And it's one literally 3 streets away from my house, because I thought it was the commute to work that was making my day just too much. And I started at this school, and it wasn't very pleasant. And my husband was very much just like, oh, the kids are just kind of, getting to grips with a new teacher. Once you've settled in, everything will just kind of calm itself down. But I was looking at the members of staff that had been there 20, 25 years, and the children were treating them in the exact same way. So I got to the stage where I was just felt like, I don't want to wait 20 years for them to be kind of on my team, and kind of feeling like I'd settled in. And I just realized that actually it wasn't the commute, it was the job that I had loved for the better part of 20 years. It wasn't the job that I had originally signed up to do. And whilst I recognize, life changes, and children change and expectations change, the job was completely unrecognizable from what it was when I first started teaching. The expectations had changed. The level of roles that I was being expected to do, rather than just teaching, planning, marking, those sorts of things. I was bringing food in for children that weren't being fed at home. I was doing laundry for children that weren't having their laundry done. I was social worker, police officer, doctor. It all kind of rolled into one. and it was just too much. And I just felt like I didn't want to do it anymore. And my husband was like, okay, well, what else can you do? He desperately wanted to set up a Domino's, but we missed it by about 3 months when someone else kind of bought the franchise for our area. Um, and he signed up for find a franchise business in your area. Because I'll be honest with you, the thought of kind of setting up a business absolutely terrified me. My husband mentioned something like, "Oh, you'll need public liability insurance," and I was like, "I don't even know what that is." Panic. So I knew I wanted to do something in terms of continuing to work with children, but working more on building confidence,
Mm.
increasing positivity, building resilience. And I stumbled across a franchise that was already established that was basically doing that, um, and haven't looked back. So I'm doing all of the fun parts of teaching, where you're working with children, building up your connections with them, helping them build themselves up, with none of the bits that I didn't love about teaching. So no detentions for having the wrong colour socks, no detentions because they haven't got a pen, no phone calls home because they're misbehaving. So yeah, all of the good parts and none of the not so good parts.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I love that. And one thing that you said that I would like to talk a little bit about was is that you made the decision and you were scared and you weren't really sure. And there was words that got a little intimidating for you, but it sounds as if like once you made the jump or the leap of faith and trusted
Yeah,
what would happen, something fell in your lap almost, or you stumbled
absolutely.
across
Yeah.
something. And so let's talk about that a little bit of like that resistance that a lot of us have is that the uncertainty and this light or excuse me this job might be what it's doing for me isn't really fulfilling me, but I also don't know what's there. So you trusted, you took the leap, and I've done that several times in my life, and it's crazy how things
It's
do.
scary. Yeah.
Yeah, so let's talk about that a little bit. You said it was scary, it was daunting, it was things like that that you had never really experienced, but now it seems like you have found the actual joy that you had been looking for in that first, purpose-driven part of your life of that, but now you're in this other type, and you said that you grow and you change and things can evolve. And so I just love that you trusted and it aligned for you.
Absolutely. So I think part of it was the moment I had made, well, we had as a couple had made the decision that I could leave teaching and set up something on my own. I really realized just how completely unhappy and miserable I was.
Mm.
So whilst it was scary and even still, sometimes I miss the fact that my wage doesn't always come in on the 25 at the 25th of every month, and I know exactly what I'm getting and when it's coming. Um, the scary bits are now far outweighed by the good bits and the kind of flexibility for my family, the
Mm.
fact that I found my joy again, um, and we viewed it very much like they're always looking for English teachers locally to me. So worst case scenario, I can do supply teaching or just
Sure.
get another job. So I haven't lost the qualifications, I haven't lost the experience, and because I'm still mainly working with children, I've obviously still got those kind of skills and they're not rusty. So I've not lost anything by doing it. And I'm not missing it. I'm not missing it at all. So whilst it was frightening and I had to do a lot of work on my mindset and my
Mhm.
resilience and my self-talk and making sure that I was prioritizing my well-being and my mental health, which I think hadn't even been on the list for the last 20 years of teaching. Um, yeah, it's really helped to kind of build up my resilience again and kind of build me back up from the inside out in order to be able to do this. So yeah.
Yeah, and that's so important because I think each and every person that listens to this episode is going to relate so much to you right now of the scared but do it anyway, or the I need
Yeah.
to switch shift my mindset, or I need to work on myself because I think a lot of times I myself am not a mom. I was a stepmom for 10 years, and I understand, but I always relate to when we put other people first, right? And so maybe you had lost your sense of how do I really truly feel because it was
Yeah.
lost in taking care of the children at school. You also have told me that you have your own children, and so let's talk about that too, because I think a lot of times moms tend to think I can't make this shift because you had mentioned too that you had the certainty with a paycheck, you had the certainty with
Mhm.
some of this, but we do need to make the shifts, like you said, the mindset shifts and that internal feeling, because a lot of times we stay in that I always call it the chaos, right? The chaos that just is familiar because it's the known, right? And so I
Yeah.
want to talk to that because you mentioned that, like, you had to think about, you have children and you obviously think about all those things, but you
Yeah.
also really truly thought about you first as well, because
Yeah.
we all have heard that happy wife, happy life. We've heard those silly things, right? And I believe it's internally has to happen. You have to be fulfilled and love yourself and trust yourself, to
Yeah.
then do it for everybody else, right? I talked about that even
Definitely.
today, is fill your cup first. So
Absolutely.
yeah, you were feeling so unfulfilled in your job, and it was probably leaking into family life, and it was in.
Massively leaking into family life. I was stressed over the stupidest, smallest things. And,
Mm,
and actually, it wasn't those. They were just the kind of symptom of the thing that was making me feel so stressed. And I think because I was dealing with so much challenging behavior at school, and both from staff and students,
mm,
and really not feeling happy about any aspect of what I was doing at work. And obviously, you're at work for a really long time, especially in education. It's not a 9 to 3 job, regardless of what people think. And I was exhausted by it, and I had literally nothing to give myself or my kids at the end of the day. And weekends, I was marking and planning and,
right.
running around after the kids, which I love doing, but equally, still wasn't giving me anything. So I was just exhausted. And when it comes to things like, recognizing that your wages come in on whatever date, we did the maths and we worked out just by not paying wraparound care, because my kids are in before and after school club
Mm,
every day. We've got 3 children. We would save £9,000 per academic year by
wow.
them not going. So that in itself was almost a wage. I didn't need to be earning all that much more to kind of compensate for what we weren't spending there. So I very much built it up slowly, took it a bit at a time.
Mm,
It takes time to establish yourself. So in terms of like starting a new business from scratch, I've learned to be very patient,
yeah.
and a lot kinder to myself than I definitely was before. um Not kind of taking it so personally when
Mm.
they don't, you get ghosted by a school and they don't book you or whatever. That's okay, there's another 100 schools out there that just don't know about you yet. So yeah.
Yeah, I am just sitting here thinking, because I know that this is resonating on such a level with parents for sure, and women, I believe that you know, we tend to think we have to do to provide, and we have to do all these things, and in what I hear from you, in all reality, you were like, okay, but if I can do this, and it also
Yeah.
saves, like you talked about, the childcare, the things afterwards. And so I think when you talk about that, I want to dive into that with someone who's sitting here thinking, man, Claire, this is so inspiring, and you did take this shift, and you have now you're not looking back.
No.
The resistance comes, right? We all have it. We all have the evil child on the side of us saying, "Don't do it. It's scary."
Yeah.
And so when you had that pull of resistance, but you also started to outweigh, like you kind of mentioned, it's like, well, if I stay at this point, or if I do this, we're
Yeah.
saving money. And in the long run, you decided that you developed what? More mindset. You developed more of that internal knowing. You've
Yeah.
really worked on yourself. And so I think
Definitely.
that's what people need to turn up the volume right now and listen, that through making a power shift in your life, you're not only choosing yourself, you're choosing your family, and you're
Yeah,
also choosing a fulfilling life where, like you mentioned, maybe the kids will do something and it's not the freak out and tense up because of something else going on. It's the the kids are kids. Let's just we so I want to talk about that because I think what's so interesting in what you've shared is that you really truly decided, you took the action, you had the resistance. It was like, oh my gosh. But in all this, like you have become a better person. Your family seems to be
absolutely.
connecting, and so I want that to be such this powerful statement from you saying it's so worth taking the risk and taking the chances because
Definitely.
we hold ourselves back because we aren't so sure. And when we're not sure, I think that's where the beauty is I talk about that all the time. The beauty really is in the chaos of then
Yeah,
trying to say what's going to change. And so I would love to just kind of talk to you a little bit about like, you have this future now, you have a second business. So
yeah,
it sounds like things are just um compounding, right? And I think that's what people are
absolutely.
afraid of, right? Is
Yeah,
well, I don't know. And sometimes we take a step back, but that compound effect for you, it sounds like you're really truly honing into to what is actually the zone of genius for Claire. And I like that because it's authentic
yeah,
to you, right?
yeah.
So can you talk about maybe a mindset shift that really happened for you that you truly were able to just embrace the change and maybe a little bit of chaos?
So I think that my self-talk
Mm,
has been exceptionally negative
mm.
for a really long time. And
Can
I
anybody
always
relate to that?
hands up.
Guilty. Sorry, I was
I
like,
think
eh.
I think sometimes life throws things at you that
Mm-hmm.
even if you are the most optimistic person on the planet, it will chip away at your psyche. And you will
Mm-hmm.
get to a stage in your life where if you're not doing anything about that chipping away, eventually you get to the stage where you are actually quite negative and you don't even recognize yourself or you don't
Right.
even necessarily realize that that's the point that you've got to. And I had definitely got to that point. I think sometimes life, throws a lot of obstacles your way. And although you navigate those and you feel as though you've overcome them, they leave a lasting impact on you. And there's two ways of kind of dealing with that. You either kind of allow that to kind of make you into a victim,
Mm-hmm.
and have that kind of victim mentality where, I'm very hard done by and life is terrible. Or you recognize it as a challenge. And, yes, there will be times where you feel, oh my goodness, this is just too much for me. But you need to be kind of pushing past it and recognizing that actually it doesn't need to define you. And I had allowed certain things to define me without even realizing that they had. If that makes sense. I think sometimes when you're just so busy, and there's just so many moving parts in your life that you don't get that time and that space to self-reflect and kind of look at how you're feeling and check in with yourself and figure out, what you're doing with your life. And I had got to that point, and stepping back from teaching gave me that headspace to
Mm,
really kind of work on myself, and challenge some of those negative thoughts in my head that are thoughts and not facts, and really kind of allow me to navigate around some of those more challenging aspects of my life and really kind of overcome some of the obstacles that have crept up over the last 20 years of being in education and just being like mega busy. Um, and that has allowed me the space to go, you know what, actually, as much as I love my franchise and I'm not intending to give that up or,
mm-hmm.
move away from it, I have now got the capacity to build something separate for me.
Mm-hmm.
And I've got the understanding, the business know-how, the ideas, etc. Um, and I feel that buzz that I used to have when I first started teaching, probably before I had my own children, where I had the capacity to be kind of building and working a longer day and things like that. Um, and getting that self-fulfillment through it because I can say, oh, I've done this and look at what the result has been from doing this.
Mhm.
Um, so yeah, I think that's definitely been something that I've had to work on, is that self-talk. And I think what's really done it for me is my eldest child is 12, she's a girl. And um if she was saying out loud some of the things that I know I have been saying inside my own head about myself, there's absolutely no way that I would let her
Mm.
feel like that about herself, and I would challenge it every step of the way. Well, if it's not true about her, then how can it be true about me? And why would I allow myself to be saying those things about myself? So yeah, it's been a massive shift.
That is so powerful because I actually just watched a movie that had this constant reminder for me about um, asking some very hard questions, like you just said, like if this was my daughter and I heard her saying these things, or
Yeah,
so I think that reflection is what I'm hearing, and hearing you say that, like almost the slow down to really connect with yourself
yeah,
um, is so important. So as a mom, and since you do have kiddos, and somebody that does have that negative self-talk and really does want to try to start this new, maybe a new way of thinking, but also feels very overwhelmed and daunted by, well, I have my kids and I have to take care of this, and now I'm trying to do this and I'm trying to do that. What did you do that seemed maybe a simple way for somebody to say, okay, I can actually start this? Because I think that's what happens a lot of times is that,
yeah,
you said one thing, negative self-talk, but in negative self-talk, there's a lot of layers to that. And so
absolutely.
let's talk about that when, you do have other people you're taking care of, but you're also, the most important person, I believe, is ourselves. And that's not
Yeah.
selfish. It's
Because if you
not
don't look after yourself, you've got nothing to give anybody else. And I think
right.
it took me stepping back from teaching to realize that.
Mm,
I think our society, certainly British society, I'm assuming it's very similar in the States, is very much like it's a badge of honor to be absolutely exhausted
oh
and
yeah.
to have worked so hard. And everyone's like, oh, high five, well done, you must be shattered. Yes, I am. But actually, why is that a good thing? What,
Right.
who is winning from me being absolutely exhausted to the extent where I can't function?
Right. We don't get
Nobody's
a
winning because I can't give anybody anything when I'm like that.
right.
And I think that we need to be much better at not getting to that point of taking, 2 minutes here throughout the day, five
Mm,
minutes there. Doesn't like the way that I practice mindfulness is literally a couple of minutes every couple of hours. I'm not
sure.
talking let's like dedicate 3 hours of my day to it, because that is a barrier for me. I am too busy to give that time, and that then becomes something that I don't do. Whereas if
Mm,
I give myself a couple of minutes here, there, and everywhere throughout the day, I don't get to the point at the end of the day where I'm so exhausted that I can't string a coherent sentence together. And as an English teacher, that's not a good way to be. So just kind of pacing yourself, recognizing when you're shattered. Don't forget to drink. Don't forget to go to the loo. Don't forget to eat, because we're all very guilty of doing that because we're
yeah.
too busy to do it. But then, really, are we really too busy to eat and drink and go to the loo? That's crazy.
Yeah, yeah, and I'm smiling because I remember I was a hairstylist for so long, and it was like, can I either eat lunch, go to the bathroom, or rinse my client's hair out? Or then when I got home, it's like I don't want to go to the bathroom. We're always like we're grinding.
Go,
And
go, 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 go. Yeah,
yeah, and I love that you just said that, because I think it is daunting to think I have to spend an hour on myself in the morning for self-care and development and all the things, and it's like no, put it in, sprinkle it into your life like
yeah,
it's going to the restroom.
yeah,
Or, I think for us, we tend to try to say, I don't have that time. Well, you have to make the time. And for you, you've
yeah,
put it into smaller increments. So anybody listening to this right now, I think that is a huge moment of like almost that burden lifted off your shoulders to be like, I don't have the 60 minutes, or I don't even have, let's
yeah,
just say a half an hour. You do have micro bits of time. And I think that even with the negative self-talk turning to positive talk, that's actually done throughout your day. And a lot
Absolutely.
of mindset and self-development is done through other actions of your day. And I like to point that out because I think if you don't think you have a set time, like you mentioned, it's okay to not have that set time, but then be mindful throughout the
Hmm.
day. I
Yeah.
actually saw something the other day. Don't take your phone into the restroom, and I'm like, who takes? I mean, I don't want to go. I don't
I
need that.
I I not I'll be honest with you, I don't think I can trust people that do. Like like when you flush, like stuff
Yeah,
comes out. No.
I would just rather have that little bit alone time to myself, pondering your thoughts and so I was kind of taken back because I thought, oh my gosh, there's some people that honestly that could be your moment of
Yes,
sanity for
absolutely.
yourself. And so
Yeah.
yeah, I just love that you talked about sprinkling because it seems a lot of times I think we think things are so far out of our reach because, like you said, we've piled things up in front of our
Yeah.
face, right? That then it seems like the hill that we're having to climb over is so high and so daunting, but truly taking that little bit of space for yourself, it sounds like it's been pretty life-changing for you.
Completely life-changing. Yeah. I mean, I first kind of came to mindfulness about 10 years ago. We had three children under the age of three.
Oh wow.
And my mum was like, you need to meditate or practice mindfulness.
Do something.
And you also need to practice affirmations. And I was just like, I thought in order to be good at mindfulness, you needed to be grateful and appreciate every single second of your day. That's what I thought it meant.
Mm,
And there were just way too many nappies in my day for me to kind of really appreciate and find the joy in every moment. And I just felt like meditation, I felt like I couldn't do it because I
mm,
felt like you had to completely empty your brain and it had to be silent. I just couldn't make it silent. So I thought I wasn't doing it right. Um, but actually, that isn't the case. And I just kind of totally misunderstood what the concept was and what it was
hmm.
asking from you. And I think that, you know, practicing anything like that, it's called a practice for a reason, and that's because it's never perfect. So, today I managed to meditate for 40 minutes.
Oh wow.
Yesterday I managed three, and that's okay.
Uh, Thank you for saying that. I had to stop
Yeah.
because I was like, hello, listen to this.
Yeah.
So powerful because
I had a quieter day today.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And it's
Yeah.
okay to have those days like that. And I think that that's what's so important is because I know in my mindfulness journey of, really trying to connect, I still, even after practicing meditation or silence and things, after what, 5 years, I still struggle to clear the mind and really lose myself into that meditation. But I've learned that you don't necessarily have to label it as anything, right? And
No.
it's more about just becoming more aware of what is really between here, what's going on
Yeah.
in here sometimes. And I love to say that the silence is the loudest noise you have to hear sometimes because when you're in your own peace and you have your own thoughts and you can kind of sift and sort through them. I think that that's so important. So meditation doesn't have to be that you don't have thoughts that come to your head. And I've learned that because I thought I had to say the same thing.
Yeah.
It had to all be emptied out. The trash was had to all go away, and all the new thoughts had to come. And I thought, well, that ain't happening. Um, so thank you for opening that up because I do feel that when you're starting new practices, you think as a true beginner with doing some of this mindfulness stuff, you have to feel like somebody who has maybe practiced yoga and meditation and things that really does have that stillness about them already. But that 1 to 3 minutes in your first couple of practices is just honoring
Yeah.
yourself.
It's enough to just kind of build up that kind of tolerance to it because
Yes.
it does take time. and and it fluctuates. You're feeling poorly, you've got a really stressful day, there's a lot going on in the background, and it will go up and down, and that's okay. um
Yeah.
and I think we all need to kind of stop aiming for this idea of perfection because it doesn't exist.
It doesn't. And
So,
who
so
wants
you're
to be
setting
perfect?
yourself up to fail, aren't you, right from the get-go? Because your perfect and my perfect are so completely different, and neither of us are ever going to achieve them. So that's okay.
Yeah, yeah,
Let
it's a
it go.
perspective. I love that. Okay, Claire, so what I want to just kind of talk about just for a second too, because I know you have mentioned that you have this second line of work that you're working through, and it sounds like you're
Yeah,
working with adults, which is amazing.
yeah.
And I have such a strong passion for this as well. What exactly is it that you do for the adult mind? Like what is your practice right now? Because you've
So
worked
it's
with kids
yeah.
and
So
now
it's breath
adults.
coaching. So I'm focusing on breath coaching because it's something that obviously we've all got all of the time. We're all using it all of the time. But so many people are mouth breathers,
Mm,
shallow breathers. And when you're breathing in those ways, you're just kind of activating that sympathetic nervous system. You're creating your own fight or flight.
mm.
And that can add to that feeling of stress. That can add to that feeling of overwhelm, that feeling of not being able to cope. And I work specifically with mums at the moment purely because I have lived that and I know what it feels like to feel completely overwhelmed. Um, I think I probably spent about 2 years of my children's lives just kind of quietly rocking in a corner,
Mm.
waiting for my husband to come back from work whilst I was off with them. Just kind of not able to cope, not able to kind of regulate myself and therefore struggling to regulate them. And I just think that, if we want a society where people are generally quite level and able to cope with life's trials and tribulations, then we need to be able to regulate ourselves and we need to be able to support our children to do the same thing.
Oh, yeah,
And
that's
yeah,
so important. It's so important because I
yeah,
think like I mentioned, I don't have children right now, but I know that there's so many people out there grasping to what you're saying because the
yeah,
overwhelm, the sitting in the corner thinking, "Oh my God, when am I going to get the rescue?" And just
yeah.
being able to do that breath work, it
What have I
sounds,
done?
what did I get myself into?
Yeah, nobody told me it would be like this.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. And so I love that you're doing this type of work because I think that it's so important. Because, you know, I never like to call people's ages out, but I just actually turned 39. And I have had such this craziness around my awareness about like how was I living and how am I, how are we moving through this? And so it's so cool to hear you say like you've gone through so many different shifts in this just kind of one little episode we're having here. But it sounds like it's all coming down to the awareness of yourself and then being able to actually have it for yourself and then actually create it for other people to
yeah,
have that way of just coming back home. I feel like a lot of times we just lose that it really actually is it's right here. You know,
yeah,
and it's yours and it's mine and it's the person over theirs. We all have this thing called life we're going through and we're working
yeah,
through. And it sounds like you're doing such amazing work with your own self and then being able to help other women through that time that you made it through. It sounds like it's a never ending process with children. And I know that, but
yes. Although it, dare I say it, touch all of the wood. They're now all in double digits,
yeah,
and life is a lot smoother. Mainly because they're all able to articulate, this is
right.
what's going on, this is why I feel like this is what has happened in my day. Whereas trying to understand what has set a toddler off um,
Mm,
is a very long process.
yes.
Yeah,
Yeah. Well, so what I would like to do too, Claire, is just kind of talk just to kind of come full circle with this and make the listener understand where we're really talking and what we're diving really deep into today is it sounds as if it's really about trusting and also rewriting the narrative that we've been talking ourselves to because a lot of times we've said it for so long that we've programmed ourselves to believe we aren't worthy or deserving
yeah,
or capable of change.
Yeah.
And you are proof that you truly just embraced the feeling that you knew was no longer serving you, and you turned that into something. And so I love it. I call it the power shift. You had the shift in your own internal power to now create something that is feeling more fulfilling, more purposeful. And I just want the listener to understand and think about what you mentioned, to really truly step into that next kind of version of yourself and trust that process. And so I just wanted to thank you for kind of just talking
No,
through
you're very welcome.
all of that, because I think it was so relatable on so many different levels. Um, and it's
I
just,
think for me, and the conversation that I had with my husband at the time of making the decision was very much, what's the worst that can happen?
oh yeah.
What will you lose if this doesn't work out?
Mm,
So if you kind of worst case scenario it and then figure out a solution to those worst case scenarios, then you've got your bases covered.
I love that. I absolutely love
Yeah.
that. Because I think, yes, it's framing, right? It's almost like
Yeah.
pre-framing instead of all of a
Yeah.
sudden just judging and thinking that like the worst is going to happen. You can kind of pretend, but you can also frame over here. What's
Yeah.
over here? What's that magic over here? And so I love that. So to kind of wrap this up, Claire, what I wanted to talk about in this last couple of minutes here is you might have already kind of said something that is this, but I want you to be able to share with the audience where they can find you and how to find you and all the things.
Okay.
But I also am ending each episode with a mic drop moment. And by
Oh,
that, I
okay.
mean something that has changed you. It is just one of those things that you can leave the listener feeling more inspired, confident, ready to take a power shift in their life. And so it's just, is there a mantra? Is there a quote? Is there something that you can say to our audience? But first, I would love to know where we can find you and exactly what it is that they can do with working with you.
So you can find me at the Relaxed Mind UK, um, or on LinkedIn, which is just my name. You'll be able to find me on there. Um, and then, oh, mic drop moment. I've got two because
Okay.
I've got two businesses. So I've got two. Is
Well,
that
let's hear
okay?
it. Yeah,
I can have one
absolutely.
in each hand.
Yes, I love it.
Um, so the first one, affirmations, are an absolute game changer. So I have a set of affirmations, some of which I know I already am, and I just need a reminder of. And
Mm-hmm.
some are things that I am not yet, but want to be. And
Mm,
because when you say an affirmation, you're activating a part of your brain called the reticular activation system, which then means that your brain is looking for the evidence that
mm,
proves that affirmation. So it's a little bit like car shopping. When you've been and you've tried out a new car, everywhere you go, you see that car because it's activated that part of your brain. So for me, the first one that I started with was I am successful, because obviously I was starting from scratch. I'd given up on a really successful career, and I needed to remind myself that actually I am successful, and now I am. So obviously, it's worked. And then the second one is about the breath. So
mm,
everywhere you go, you take your breath with you. And the only time that people notice that you're breathing is when you're not. Um, but when we feel stressed or we feel overwhelmed, we tend to switch to mouth breathing. It
mm,
becomes a much more shallow breath, and it kind of perpetuates that feeling of panic. So
mm.
if you are in that headspace where you're feeling panicked, I'm sure your mum probably told you this, but if you do take a nice deep breath, it actually will work and it will calm you down. So ideally try to use your nose, because your mouth really is for eating and talking, not for
Mm.
breathing. Yeah.
Oh, I love that. I love that. Mic drop. I love
Mic
that. I
drop.
think,
Yeah.
yeah, I loved what you said is like you don't recognize that you can only recognize it when they're not breathing.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So
So,
when I work with anybody really, it is one of, so we teach superpowers to children, but it is one of the superpowers that we teach. And it's one of the things that you can do regardless of where you are.
Yeah.
Nobody's going to notice that you are taking some deep breaths.
Yeah.
The only time they spot it is if you're not breathing.
Oof, I
Unless
love that.
obviously you're doing like a bit of a kind of
Sure.
walrus breath where it's very loud.
Yes. Wow. I absolutely love that. Well, Claire, thank you so much for your time. I think that there is something from this episode that is so relatable, and I appreciate your vulnerability and sharing all the experiences that you've gone through, and that you're helping other people really truly take the breath and go after, what it is that they want. So thank you for sharing. I appreciate your time so very much. And yeah, thank you.
Thank you for having me.
Yes. Thank you for tuning in to The Power Shift. I hope today's episode inspired you to see setbacks as stepping stones and embrace the beauty in the chaos. Real growth happens when we align with our true selves and live unapologetically. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to subscribe, share, and leave a review. It helps more incredible people like you discover the show. Until next time, keep making those power shifts and step boldly into the life that's authentically yours.